Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Super English Talks. I'm your host, Jara, and I'm so happy that you're here with me today. If this is your first time listening, welcome to our big and friendly learning family. You didn't find this podcast by accident. You're here because you want to learn, to grow, and to become a better version of yourself. And guess what? You're not alone. We're all on this journey together. Every single day, we share lessons, stories, and ideas that help you learn English and also help you think, feel, and live better. We truly believe that when knowledge is shared with kindness, it can make a real difference in people's lives. So, if you're ready to take that next step, to learn something new, to feel inspired, and to believe in your own potential, then stay right here with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the Super English Talks and turn on your notifications so you never miss a new episode. Now, before we start today's lesson, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt stuck? You know, that moment when you're trying to solve a problem, but no matter how hard you think, the answer just doesn't come? You look at the problem from every side, but still, nothing seems to work. It's so frustrating, isn't it? But what if I told you there's a key that can open that locked door in your mind? A kind of superpower that you already have, you just need to learn how to use it. Today, we're going to discover that superpower together. It's called creative thinking, and it's one of the most important skills you can ever learn. So, take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's begin this exciting journey into the world of creativity. When you hear the word creative, what do you think of? Maybe you imagine an artist painting a beautiful picture, a musician writing a lovely song, or a writer creating a powerful story. And yes, those are all wonderful examples of creativity. But creativity is not only for artists or musicians. It's something that every person has. It's a way of thinking, a way of solving problems, and a way of looking at the world. Being creative helps you make your everyday life easier, more interesting, and more successful. Let's look at a simple example. Imagine you're in your kitchen, and you're trying to open a jar, but the lid is stuck. You twist it, but it won't move. You could give up, but then maybe you notice something nearby, like a rubber glove. You think, maybe this can help me get a better grip. You put on the glove, try again, and pop. The lid opens easily. That little moment, that small idea, is creativity in action. You took something ordinary, a rubber glove, and connected it to your problem, the stuck jar. You saw a connection that others might not see. That's what creative thinking is all about, finding new connections, new ideas, and new solutions. Creativity is not magic. It's not something that only special people have. It's a skill, just like learning to ride a bicycle, learning to cook, or learning to speak English. And the best part is, you can practice it and get better at it every day. When you train your creative mind, you start to see the world differently. You begin to notice small details that others miss. You find new ways to solve problems. You feel more confident, more curious, and more open-minded. And over time, your creativity becomes stronger, just like a muscle. So, in this episode, we're going to explore how to develop your creative thinking step by step. We'll learn simple habits, fun exercises, and real examples that can help you unlock your creative power and use it in your studies, your work, and your daily life. Are you ready to begin? Then let's start this wonderful journey together right here on the Super English Talks, where learning English also means learning how to grow, think, and live better every day. Today, we're going to explore how you can unlock this amazing power inside you, your creative power. Don't worry, we won't use any complicated theories or difficult words. Instead, we'll use simple stories, real examples, and easy exercises to help you understand everything step by step. So, find a comfortable place to sit, take a deep breath, relax your body, and open your mind. Our adventure into the world of creative thinking begins right now. Let's start with a beautiful story that shows how creativity can grow from something very small, from simply noticing the world around you. This is the story of a Swiss engineer named George de Mestral. One sunny day in the 1940s, George decided to go for a walk in the mountains with his dog. It was a perfect day, the sky was clear, the air was fresh, and the birds were singing. But when he came back home, he noticed something a bit annoying. His clothes and his dog's fur were covered with tiny burrs. Burrs are those little seed balls from plants that love to stick to everything: your socks, your pants, your pet's fur. Now, most people would just get irritated, pull them off, throw them away, and forget about it. But George was different. He was a curious man. Instead of only feeling annoyed, he asked himself a question. Why do these little burrs stick so well? What makes them do that? His curiosity led him to take one of the burrs and look at it under a microscope. And what he saw amazed him. He discovered that the burr was covered with tiny hooks, hundreds of them. And his clothes were made of a fabric full of tiny loops. The little hooks from the burr were catching onto the loops in the fabric, and that's why they stuck so strongly. This simple discovery gave George a brilliant idea, a moment of creative inspiration. He thought, what if I could make two materials like this, one with hooks and one with loops, that stick together and pull apart easily? It was a simple but powerful idea. However, turning it into reality wasn't easy. George shared his idea with many people in the textile industry, people who made fabrics and clothing. But most of them laughed at him. They said it was too strange and too difficult to make. Still, George didn't give up. He believed in his idea. He spent the next 10 years, yes, an entire decade, experimenting, testing, and improving his designs. There were many failures along the way, but he kept going. Finally, after years of hard work, he succeeded. He created one fabric with small hooks and another with soft loops. When pressed together, they stuck. When pulled apart, they came loose. He called his invention Velcro, a name made from two French words. Velours, which means velvet, and crochet, which means hook. Today, Velcro is everywhere, on shoes, jackets, bags, cars, and even in space, used by astronauts to keep things from floating away. And all of it started because one man didn't just see an annoying burr on his dog's fur. He saw a possibility. He was curious. He observed closely, he asked questions, and he connected what he saw in nature to a human problem. This is the heart of creative thinking, learning to connect the dots. Think of creative thinking like being a chef in a kitchen. A chef has many different ingredients: vegetables, fruits, spices, grains, and meats. A great chef doesn't just follow one recipe. Instead, they try new combinations. They mix different flavors and textures to create something delicious and surprising. Your mind works the same way. Your thoughts, your memories, your knowledge, your experiences, these are your ingredients. When you mix them in new ways, when you connect ideas that don't seem related, you create something fresh and original. That is creativity. Creativity is the skill of mixing all your ideas, all your ingredients, together to cook up something new. It might be a new idea, a new story, or a new solution to a problem. Let's try a small exercise right now to practice this idea of connecting the dots. Look around the room you are in. Don't think too hard, just pick two random objects. For example, maybe you see a book and a coffee cup. Now, your challenge is to think of a way to combine these two things to create something new or solve a problem. How could a book and a coffee cup work together? Let's imagine a few fun ideas. Maybe you could design a coffee cup with a little slot on the side to hold a tiny waterproof book, so you can read in the bath without getting your pages wet. Or maybe you could make a bookend shaped like a giant coffee cup, something fun to hold your books up on a shelf. Or what about a book with pages that change color when warm coffee is spilled on them, revealing a secret message or hidden picture? Are these ideas practical? Maybe not. Are they brilliant inventions? Probably not. But that's not the point of this exercise. The point is to train your brain to help your mind make new connections. You take two separate things, like a book and a cup, and you force them together in your imagination. The more often you play this simple game, the more flexible your thinking will become. Soon, you'll start seeing connections everywhere between objects, ideas, and experiences that you never linked before. And this ability to connect things is the first step toward real creativity. But very often, something stops us. There is a big invisible wall that stands between us and our creative ideas. This wall is built from fear of being wrong, fear of saying something silly, fear of what other people might think. That fear creates a little voice in our heads, a voice we can call the inner critic. You probably know this voice well. You have a new idea, and right away the inner critic whispers, "That's stupid. That will never work. People will laugh at you." This voice is the enemy of creativity. It wants to keep you safe. It wants you to stay in your comfort zone, to only do things that are familiar and easy. But creativity is about exploring new paths, even when you don't know exactly where they lead. To be creative, you must be brave enough to get a little lost. You must be willing to have bad ideas sometimes, because that's how you discover great ones later. Let me tell you a story about someone who faced this fear again and again, a story you might already know. It's about a writer named J.K. Rowling. Today, she's one of the most famous authors in the world, the woman who wrote the Harry Potter books. But her journey to success was not easy. Before she became famous, J.K. Rowling was a single mother, struggling to make enough money to live. She had an idea for a story about a boy wizard, a magical world that she loved deeply. She believed in this story with all her heart. She spent years writing the first Harry Potter book. She often wrote in small cafes in Edinburgh, Scotland, while her baby daughter slept in a stroller beside her. She poured all her love, hope, and imagination into those pages. When she finally finished her book, she felt proud and excited. She sent it to a publisher, but they rejected it. She sent it to another publisher, they said no too. She tried again and again. In total, 12 publishers rejected Harry Potter. Can you imagine how that must have felt? 12 times, people told her that her idea wasn't good enough. 12 times, she heard no. Her inner critic must have been screaming, "See? I told you it was a bad idea. No one likes it. You should give up." It would have been so easy for J.K. Rowling to listen to that negative voice inside her head. It would have been so easy to put her book in a drawer, close it, and forget about it forever. But she didn't. She believed in her story. She had a passion that was stronger than her fear of rejection. Finally, a small publishing company in London decided to give her a chance. They agreed to publish her book, but they didn't expect much from it. In fact, they even told her she should probably get a regular job, because she was unlikely to make any money from writing children's stories. We all know what happened next. The book became a worldwide success, and the rest is history. J.K. Rowling's story teaches us a powerful lesson. Creative success isn't about having one perfect idea that everyone loves immediately. It's about persistence, continuing even when things are difficult. It's about believing in your own vision even when others don't. It's about understanding that failure and rejection are not the end of your journey. They're simply part of the path you must walk. Every no she received made her stronger and more determined to keep going. So how can we learn to quiet our own inner critic? How can we give ourselves permission to have ideas that might not be perfect? One of the best ways is through a fun little exercise called the Bad Idea Brainstorm. The goal is simple. You must deliberately come up with bad ideas. Let's try it together. Think of a simple, everyday problem. For example, how can I remember to water my plants? Now, take a few minutes and come up with the most terrible, ridiculous, or impossible solutions you can imagine. Don't judge your ideas in this game. The worse the idea, the better. Maybe you invent a tiny robot that screams at you every morning until you water your plant. Or you could connect the plant to your shower so it gets watered every time you take a bath. Or you could train your cat to knock the plant over when it's thirsty. Do you see what happens when you do this? You're telling your inner critic to take a break. You're taking away the pressure to be perfect. When you focus on having bad ideas, you stop worrying about failure because failure is the goal. It's fun, it's playful, and it gets your creative brain working without stress. And here's the magic part. Sometimes, hidden inside a very bad idea is a seed of a good one. Maybe the screaming robot isn't realistic, but it might lead you to design a fun phone app that sends you a gentle, funny reminder instead. You have to make a lot of mud before you find a little piece of gold. So welcome your bad ideas. They're the stepping stones that lead to great ones. Once we learn to manage our fear, we open the door to one of the most important ingredients of creativity, curiosity. Creative people are endlessly curious. They are like little children who never stop asking why. They look at the world with a sense of wonder and fascination. They don't just accept things the way they are, they question everything. There may be no better example of a curious mind than Leonardo da Vinci. We know him today as the painter of the Mona Lisa, one of the most famous paintings in the world. But painting was only a small part of who he was. Leonardo was curious about everything. He was a scientist, an engineer, a musician, an inventor, and a student of the human body. Throughout his life, he filled thousands of pages in his notebooks with drawings, sketches, and questions. He would watch a bird flying through the sky, and instead of just admiring its beauty, he would ask, how do its wings work? What shape helps it stay in the air? He drew detailed pictures of bird wings and even tried to design a flying machine for people. He was fascinated by water. He spent hours watching rivers flow, studying how the water moved, the way it swirled and curved. He wanted to understand the science behind it. He was deeply curious about the human body. At a time when it was risky and controversial, he studied anatomy to learn how muscles and bones worked together. His drawings of the human body were centuries ahead of their time. He was curious about light and shadow, which made his paintings look so real. He studied plants, animals, rocks, and even the stars. Leonardo's curiosity had no limits. It was the driving force behind his creativity. Leonardo da Vinci teaches us that creativity is not limited to one subject or skill. A curious mind can find connections everywhere. His knowledge of anatomy helped him paint more realistic people. His study of light and shadow improved his art. His careful observations of nature inspired his amazing inventions. His curiosity was like an engine. It powered everything he did. And here's the good news. We can all develop this same sense of curiosity in our own lives. It begins with something very simple, the habit of asking questions. We are all born curious. Think about a small child. They are always asking why. Why is the sky blue? Why do dogs wag their tails? Why can't I touch the fire? Children are full of questions. But as we grow older, something changes. We stop asking as much. We start thinking that we're supposed to already know the answers. We don't want to look silly or ignorant. But a truly creative thinker loves questions, even when there's no easy answer. They know that curiosity is the spark that leads to discovery. Let's practice curiosity right now with a little game. I call it the question game. The rules are simple. Pick any everyday object around you. Let's use a spoon as an example. Now, your challenge is to ask 20 different questions about this spoon. They can be simple, funny, or deep, it doesn't matter. Let's try together. Who invented the spoon? What is the oldest spoon ever found? What is this spoon made of? How is a spoon made in a factory? What if spoons were square instead of round? Would they still work? What else could I use a spoon for besides eating? Maybe to dig a small hole for a seed? Maybe as a mirror to see behind me? Why do we call it a spoon? Where does that word come from? Are there cultures that don't use spoons? What do they use instead? Could I make a musical instrument out of spoons? What is the most expensive spoon in the world? We're halfway there. Let's keep going. If this spoon could talk, what stories would it tell? What if a spoon were made of ice? How could I design a spoon for someone who has no hands? What is the perfect size for a soup spoon? Is it different from a dessert spoon? Why? Could I design a spoon that cools my soup to the perfect temperature? Why is my reflection upside down in the spoon? Can a spoon be a work of art? If I had to survive in the wilderness with one object, would a spoon help me? How many spoons exist in the world right now? What will the spoon of the future look like? You see, we easily came up with 20 questions about a simple spoon. This exercise stretches your mind. It makes you look at something ordinary in a completely new way. It awakens your curiosity. Try to make this a daily habit. Pick one new object every day, a shoe, a window, a tree, a coin, and ask as many questions as you can. You don't need to find all the answers. The act of asking is what truly matters. It trains your brain to be curious, to wonder, and to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. This habit of asking questions leads naturally to another key skill for creative thinking, the power of observation. Many of us go through our days in a kind of fog. We see things, but we don't really see them. We hear sounds, but we don't really listen. Our minds are busy thinking about something else, what we need to do next, what happened yesterday, or what's on our phones. A creative thinker is different. A creative thinker pays attention. They don't just look, they observe. They notice the small things that most people overlook. They see meaning in details that others ignore. Think about the famous detective Sherlock Holmes, the character created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Holmes is a genius at solving mysteries. And what is his secret power? It's not magic, and it's not luck. It's his amazing ability to observe. He notices tiny details that other people completely miss, and from those little clues, he can understand a whole story. Imagine this. Sherlock Holmes meets a man for the first time. To most people, he looks like an ordinary man. But Holmes takes one look and says, "I see you have recently come from Afghanistan." Dr. Watson, his friend, is shocked. He asks, "How on earth did you know that?" Holmes calmly explains, "I noticed that your face is tanned, but your wrists are pale. That tells me you've been in a hot country, but you wear long sleeves, perhaps because you're a doctor or a soldier. You also walk with a slight limp in your left leg, an injury that soldiers often get in that part of the world. And your posture, the way you stand, shows a kind of military discipline." So, it was easy to guess. Of course, this is a story, but it shows a very real truth. The world around us is full of information, full of clues, full of ideas if we only take the time to see them. There's a big difference between looking and seeing. Looking is passive, it just happens. You open your eyes and light enters. But seeing is active. It means paying attention, noticing details, and thinking about what you observe. And real observation doesn't just use your eyes. It uses all your senses. Try this right now. Take a deep breath. Listen carefully. What can you hear besides my voice? Maybe the quiet hum of your computer. Maybe the sound of traffic in the distance. Maybe the wind outside, or a bird singing. Now, what can you smell? The warm scent of coffee? The fresh air after rain? Maybe something cooking in the kitchen. What can you feel? The texture of the chair beneath you. The temperature of the room. The fabric of your clothes touching your skin. When you pay attention to these small sensory details, something magical happens. You start collecting tiny pieces of information, ingredients for your creative kitchen. Your brain stores all of them, even when you don't realize it. And one day, they might come back to you in surprising ways. Maybe a certain smell will remind you of a childhood memory and inspire you to write a story. Maybe the pattern of cracks on the sidewalk will give you an idea for a piece of jewelry or a design. Maybe the rhythm of footsteps on the street will become the beat of a song. Observation feeds creativity. Here's a simple exercise to help you practice it. I call it a walk with new eyes. The next time you go for a walk, maybe to the shops, to school, or just around your neighborhood, choose a route you know very well. A street you have walked hundreds of times. But this time, your goal is different. Your mission is to notice 5 things you have never noticed before. Slow down. Look around carefully. Look up. Look down. Look close. You might see a tiny carving on an old building. You might notice a plant growing between 2 stones. You might discover that one door is painted a bright, unusual color. You might hear a wind chime making a gentle sound in the breeze. You might see the sunlight creating beautiful patterns of shadow on the ground. When you walk with new eyes, the familiar world suddenly becomes new again. You realize how much beauty, detail, and inspiration has always been around you, waiting for you to notice it. So, practice this skill. Be present. Be curious. And remember, creativity doesn't only live in your imagination, it also lives in the way you see the world. There's a wonderful story about creativity and how new ideas are born. It's the story of how Post-it notes were invented. It all started at a company called 3M many years ago. A scientist named Dr. Spencer Silver was working in the laboratory. His goal was to create a very strong glue, one that could hold things together tightly and never come off. But something unexpected happened. Instead of a strong glue, Dr. Silver created a very weak adhesive. It could stick lightly to a surface, but you could easily peel it off without leaving any mark. And the best part, you could use it again and again. At first, everyone thought it was a failure. Even Dr. Silver himself didn't know what to do with it. This wasn't the glue he wanted. It wasn't strong enough to be useful, or so it seemed. Still, Dr. Silver was fascinated by his discovery. He went around the company showing his strange invention to his colleagues. He would say, "Look at this. It sticks, but it doesn't stay. It's a solution without a problem." He was just exploring, experimenting, and wondering what it could be used for. This is called divergent thinking, when you explore possibilities without worrying about the final answer. You're not trying to solve a problem yet. You're just playing with ideas and seeing where they might lead. Years passed. Dr. Silver's weak glue sat quietly in the background, waiting for its moment. Then came another man at 3M, Art Fry. Art wasn't just an engineer. He also sang in his church choir. Every Sunday, he used little scraps of paper to mark the pages in his book of songs. But there was a problem. The little paper bookmarks always fell out. Every time he opened his book, his markers had slipped or disappeared. It was frustrating. One Sunday, as he sat in church trying to keep his place in the book, he suddenly remembered Dr. Silver's failed glue, the one that stuck lightly and could be peeled off easily. And that was his moment of inspiration. He thought, what if I put that weak glue on my paper bookmarks? They would stick to the page, but I could remove them without tearing the paper. That's when convergent thinking came in, when you take existing ideas and connect them to solve a specific problem. Art Fry went back to his lab, made a few samples, and tested his idea. It worked perfectly. He and his colleagues started using the sticky papers around the office, not just as bookmarks, but also to leave little notes for each other. Everyone loved them. Before long, 3M began selling them as Post-it notes, and they became one of the most successful office products in history. This story beautifully shows how two types of thinking work together. Divergent thinking, like Dr. Silver's, exploring and experimenting without knowing the goal. Convergent thinking, like Art Fry's, focusing on a specific problem and finding the right solution. Both are essential parts of creativity. You need the freedom to explore new ideas and the focus to bring those ideas to life. We can actually practice these two types of thinking right now with a simple and fun exercise. It's called the Paperclip Challenge. Here's how it works. Take a common object, a paperclip. First, let's practice divergent thinking. Your task is to think of as many uses for a paperclip as you can in 2 minutes. Don't judge your ideas. Don't try to be practical. Just let your imagination flow. The goal is quantity, not quality. Let's begin. You could use a paperclip to hold papers together. That's the obvious one. You could use it to reset a small electronic device. You could bend it into a tiny hook to pull something out of a small space. You could make jewelry, a necklace or earrings. You could turn it into a mini sculpture. You could use it as a bookmark. You could make a keychain. You could even use it to unlock a door or press a tiny button. See how it works? The more you think, the more ideas come. Some will be silly, some might actually be useful, but that's the fun of it. When you finish, look back at your list. Now, switch to convergent thinking. Choose one or two of those ideas and ask, how could I make this real, or how could I use this idea to solve a problem? That's the creative process in action, moving from exploration to focus, from imagination to invention. You could even use a paperclip as a lockpick, maybe in a movie scene. You could straighten it and use it to clean under your fingernails. You could link many paperclips together to make a long chain. You could turn one into a tiny antenna for a small radio, or use it as a tiny screwdriver to tighten something. You could bend it into the shape of a heart and give it to someone you like. You could use it to hang a very light Christmas ornament or to poke a small hole in something. What else could you do? Keep going. Try to think outside the box. Okay, time's up. Now look at your list. You probably have quite a few ideas, maybe even more than you expected. That was divergent thinking, opening your mind to many different possibilities without worrying if they are right or wrong. Now let's move to the second part of the challenge, convergent thinking. Look back at your list and choose your 3 best ideas. But what does best mean? It could mean the most useful idea, the most creative idea, or the one that surprised you the most. The choice is yours. This part is about analyzing, comparing, and deciding. It's about choosing which ideas have the most potential. This process of narrowing down, of selecting the best options, is convergent thinking. By practicing both parts of this exercise, you are training your full set of creative muscles. You are learning not only how to generate a lot of ideas, but also how to recognize which ones are worth developing. But even when we practice all these techniques, sometimes we still get stuck. We keep looking at a problem from the same angle, the same old way, and the solution just doesn't appear. When that happens, one of the most powerful creative strategies is to change your perspective, to look at the problem from a completely different point of view. Let me tell you a modern story that shows how this simple shift in perspective can change everything. It's the story of Netflix. Back in the 1990s, if you wanted to watch a new movie at home, you had to go to a video rental store like Blockbuster. You would rent a movie on a VHS tape or DVD, take it home, and then return it by a certain date. If you forgot to return it on time, you had to pay a late fee. Everyone hated late fees, but that was just how the system worked. One day, a man named Reed Hastings rented the movie Apollo 13. He enjoyed the movie, but he forgot to return it. When he finally did, he had to pay a late fee of $40. He was frustrated and embarrassed. On his way home, he started thinking about what had happened. At first, he was just angry about the fee. That was the normal reaction. But then, something interesting happened. He changed the way he looked at the situation. Instead of thinking, "That's unfair," he began to ask, "Why does it have to be this way? What if it could be different?" He asked himself a powerful what-if question. What if renting movies worked like a gym membership? At a gym, you pay a flat monthly fee. You can go as often or as little as you want. No one charges you extra if you skip a few days. There are no late fees. This was a completely new perspective. He stopped thinking like a customer who had a problem and started thinking like an inventor searching for a better solution. From that one idea, the concept of Netflix was born. Reed Hastings started a new kind of business. Customers would pay a monthly subscription fee. The company would mail DVDs to their homes. You could keep them for as long as you wanted, no late fees, no stress. When you finished a movie, you simply mailed it back, and Netflix would send you the next one on your list. This simple shift in perspective, from late fees to membership, completely changed the movie rental industry. It offered a new, fair, and more convenient way to watch movies. And over time, this small idea grew into a billion-dollar company that transformed how the entire world watches films. Blockbuster, the old video rental giant, couldn't adapt and eventually disappeared. All of that happened because one person decided to look at a problem differently. That's the power of changing your perspective. When you stop asking, "What's wrong?" and start asking, "What if?" you open the door to creativity, innovation, and endless new ideas. It all happened because Reed Hastings didn't just stay angry about his $40 late fee. Instead of complaining, he turned his frustration into a question. He asked himself, how could this be different? That one small shift in thinking, that change in perspective, led to the birth of Netflix. So, how can we practice this same skill? How can we learn to look at a problem from a new angle instead of staying stuck in the same old way of thinking? One simple and fun method is something called role-playing. Here's how it works. When you face a problem, try pretending you're someone else, a person with a totally different background or job, and imagine how they might solve it. Let's take an example. Suppose you have a personal problem. My desk is always messy, and I can never find anything. If you think about it from your usual point of view, you probably feel frustrated or maybe a bit guilty. Your first solutions might be things like, I should try to be tidier, or I need to buy more storage boxes. Those are fine ideas, but they're also quite ordinary. Now let's change perspectives and see what happens. First, imagine you're a chef. A chef works in a busy kitchen where everything must be perfectly organized. Chefs follow a principle called mise en place, a French phrase that means everything in its place. If a chef looked at your messy desk, they would probably say, you need a system. They might tell you to create zones, one area for pens, one for paper, one for tools or electronics. Everything you need should be within easy reach, and everything you don't need should be put away. This perspective gives you the idea of creating a workspace system, just like a chef organizes a kitchen. Now, imagine you're a 5-year-old child. A child wouldn't see a messy desk as a problem. They might see it as a treasure chest full of interesting things. A child might say, why don't you make it fun? Maybe you could use bright, colorful boxes or put funny labels on everything. Maybe you could even turn tidying up into a little game, rewarding yourself when the desk is clear. This child's perspective adds playfulness and joy to a boring task. Finally, imagine you're a librarian. A librarian is an expert at keeping things in order and finding them quickly. They might suggest creating a labeling system, just like the Dewey Decimal System used in libraries. You could label drawers, folders, or files by category, or even make a simple list showing where everything is. This librarian's perspective gives you a methodical and efficient solution. Now, look at what happened. You started with one simple problem, a messy desk, but by looking through 3 different pairs of eyes, you discovered 3 completely different kinds of solutions. The chef's idea: create zones and organize by function. The child's idea: make cleaning fun and creative. The librarian's idea: build a clear labeling system. This exercise is powerful because it forces your mind to break its habits. Instead of thinking in the same predictable way, you start to see new possibilities that were invisible before. So, the next time you feel stuck, ask yourself, how would an engineer solve this? How would an artist solve this? How would a detective solve this? Each time you do, you'll find a new doorway into creativity. But there's another fascinating part of the creative process, something that feels almost magical, yet it's completely real. It's called incubation. Incubation is what happens when you stop working on a problem and let your mind rest. At first, this might sound strange. We often believe that the harder we think, the faster we'll find the answer. But sometimes, the best thing you can do for your creativity is to step away. When you stop focusing so hard, your brain keeps quietly working in the background. It connects ideas, explores hidden paths, and sometimes, when you least expect it, the answer suddenly appears. There's a very famous story from ancient Greece that explains this perfectly. It's the story of the brilliant mathematician Archimedes. A long time ago, in the ancient city of Syracuse, there lived a wise man named Archimedes. He was not just a mathematician, but also an inventor and a thinker, someone the king trusted with difficult problems. One day, the king of Syracuse had a beautiful new gold crown made. He gave a certain amount of gold to a goldsmith and told him to use all of it to create the crown. When the crown was finished, it looked wonderful, shiny, heavy, and perfectly shaped. But the king became suspicious. He began to wonder if the goldsmith had cheated him. Maybe he had kept some of the gold for himself and mixed in a cheaper metal like silver. The crown couldn't just be melted down to check, because that would destroy it. So, the king called for Archimedes and said, "I want to know if my crown is made of pure gold, but you must not damage it in any way." This was a very tough challenge. Archimedes knew that gold is denser than silver, which means the same weight of gold takes up less space than silver. If he could somehow find out the volume of the crown, how much space it took up, then he could compare it to the volume of pure gold of the same weight. If the crown took up more space than it should, it would mean that it wasn't pure gold. But there was a problem. The crown was not a simple shape like a cube or a box. He couldn't just measure its length, width, and height. It had a complex, irregular design. So how could he measure its volume? Archimedes thought about this day and night. He tried many ideas, but nothing worked. He began to feel tired, frustrated, and stuck. Finally, he decided to take a break. He went to the public bathhouse to relax. The large bathtub was filled to the very top with warm water. As Archimedes stepped in, he noticed something interesting. The water spilled out over the sides of the tub as his body sank into it. At that moment, something clicked in his mind. Even though he wasn't thinking about the problem anymore, his subconscious mind was still working quietly in the background. And suddenly, the answer appeared. He realized that the amount of water that spilled out was exactly equal to the volume of his body that went under the water. This meant he had found a way to measure the volume of any irregular object, even the crown. Excited beyond words, Archimedes leapt out of the bath, forgetting even to put on his clothes, and ran through the streets shouting, "Eureka! Eureka!" which means "I have found it" in Greek. Now he had the perfect way to test the crown. He took a piece of pure gold that weighed exactly the same as the crown and placed it carefully in a container filled to the top with water. He measured how much water overflowed. Then he did the same with the crown. If the crown made more water spill out, that meant it took up more space than the gold, meaning it was less dense and mixed with a lighter metal like silver. And sure enough, that's what happened. The goldsmith had cheated. This story of Archimedes teaches us an amazing lesson about creativity and the mind. When Archimedes was struggling to solve the problem, his conscious mind was working very hard, but sometimes, focusing too hard can make you stuck. Your brain can get tunnel vision, seeing only one way of thinking. When he stepped away and relaxed, his subconscious mind continued to process the information quietly in the background. Then, in that relaxed state, a new connection suddenly appeared, and that was the eureka moment. Our minds work the same way. Sometimes, when you're stuck on a hard problem, whether it's writing, designing, studying, or solving something, the best thing you can do is stop thinking about it for a while. Do something else. Go for a walk, take a shower, listen to music, or even do a simple, repetitive task like washing dishes. When you let your mind wander freely, you often get a flash of inspiration that seems to come from nowhere. But it doesn't come from nowhere, it comes from your own mind, working quietly in the background. So, here's a practical strategy you can use: the sleep on it technique. When you're faced with a big problem or a creative block, first work hard on it for a while. Really focus. Try different ideas. Then, step away. Do something relaxing or even go to sleep. When you wake up, you may suddenly see the solution clearly, as if it appeared out of thin air. That's the power of incubation, your brain's hidden ability to keep creating even when you think you've stopped. Once you've worked hard on a problem, here's the next step: deliberately stop. Put it aside. Don't think about it anymore. Go and do something completely unrelated and ideally relaxing. Take a run. Play with your dog. Cook a meal. Or, of course, you can literally sleep on it. When you give your brain this break, you are allowing it to incubate the problem. Your subconscious mind keeps working quietly in the background, even when you think you've stopped thinking. You might be amazed, The solution can appear suddenly in the morning, during a walk, while cooking, or even in the shower. Just like it happened for Archimedes in the bathtub, the answer can pop into your mind when you are relaxed and not forcing it. The key is not to force it. Creativity needs both effort and relaxation. It needs focus and rest. Up until now, we've mostly talked about the internal world of creativity, your mindset, your thought habits, and your mental processes. But creativity is also shaped by your external world, your environment, and your lifestyle. Think of creativity like a plant. A plant can't grow in poor soil, in the dark, or without water. To grow strong and healthy, it needs a good environment. Your creativity works the same way. It needs a supportive environment to flourish. And the good news? You don't need a fancy art studio or expensive office. Even small changes can make a big difference. Let's look at a famous example: Pixar Animation Studios. Pixar is the company behind beloved movies like Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and Up. Steve Jobs, who co-founded Pixar, had a brilliant idea about how the company's office could boost creativity. He believed that the best ideas don't come from scheduled meetings. They come from accidental encounters, unplanned moments when people from different departments bump into each other and start talking. To make this happen, he designed the building around a huge central atrium. He placed the main entrance, the mailboxes, the cafeteria, the only set of bathrooms, and the main staircase all in this central space. At first, employees complained. Walking to the bathroom or the cafeteria took longer than usual. But Jobs insisted. Why? Because by forcing people from different teams to walk through the same space, he was engineering creative collisions. A computer programmer might run into a storyboard artist and have a casual chat while grabbing coffee. In those short, unplanned conversations, a new idea for a character or a solution to a technical problem could be born. This design helped create Pixar's collaborative and innovative culture, where creativity was built into the environment itself. You can use the same principle in your own life, even on a smaller scale. Look at your personal space, your room, desk, or workspace. Is it inspiring? Does it encourage new thoughts? Here are some simple ways to make it more creative. Put up pictures or quotes that inspire you. Keep small, interesting objects on your desk, a strange rock, a beautiful seashell, a puzzle, or anything unusual. These objects act as triggers for your imagination, sparking ideas when you least expect them. By creating a friendly, inspiring environment, you give your mind the right conditions to grow ideas, just like a plant grows stronger in sunlight and good soil. Creativity is also about what you feed your brain. We often talk about a healthy diet for our bodies, eating fruits, vegetables, and good proteins. But what about a healthy diet for your mind? If you eat the same food every day, your body will miss out on important nutrients. In the same way, if you only expose your mind to the same ideas and experiences every day, your creativity will starve. To be creative, you need to give your brain a rich and varied diet of new knowledge, experiences, and perspectives. This means stepping out of your comfort zone. Read a book or magazine about something you know nothing about. If you love sports, read about ancient history. If you are a scientist, try a book of poetry. Watch documentaries on unusual subjects, deep-sea exploration, beekeeping, or space travel. Listen to a new type of music. Visit a museum or art gallery. Go to a part of your town you've never been to. Try a new type of food. Talk to people who are different from you, people with different jobs, backgrounds, and opinions. Every new experience, every new piece of knowledge is an ingredient for your creative kitchen. You never know when one small idea might connect to a problem you're trying to solve. One of the most important habits you can develop is capturing your ideas. Ideas are like butterflies, beautiful and delicate, but they can fly away and be lost forever if you don't catch them. Creative people know that ideas can come at any time, in the shower, while driving, or even in the middle of the night. That's why Leonardo da Vinci always carried a notebook. He was always ready to capture a new idea. You can do the same. Carry a small notebook and a pen, or use a notes app on your phone. The tool doesn't matter, the habit does. Whenever a small idea, a question, an observation, or a connection pops into your mind, write it down immediately. Don't judge it. Don't worry if it seems silly, small, or strange. Just capture it. Maybe you overhear an interesting conversation on the bus, write it down. Maybe you see a clever design for a door handle, sketch it. Maybe you have a strange dream, record it. Your notebook will become your personal treasure chest of ideas. Most of the things you write down might never be used, but some of them will grow into future projects, solutions, or even breakthroughs. Writing your ideas also signals to your brain that you value them. And when your brain knows you're paying attention, it will start giving you even more ideas. And so, as we come to the end of our journey today, let's remember what we've learned about creative thinking. Creativity is not a mysterious gift reserved for a few lucky people. It is a natural human skill that anyone can develop. It begins with a change in how we see the world, like George de Mestral, who noticed an invention hidden in a simple burr. It's about observing closely and being curious about the why and how of everything around us. When we pay attention, stay curious, try new things, and capture our ideas, we can all unlock the power of creativity within ourselves. Creativity is waiting. All you have to do is see it, explore it, and catch it. Just like Leonardo da Vinci carried his notebooks and captured every idea, creativity requires courage. Courage to face the inner critic, the little voice in our heads that says, "This is a bad idea," or "You'll fail." It takes the kind of courage that J.K. Rowling showed when she believed in her story, even after dozens of rejections. We have learned that creativity is like a dance between two kinds of thinking. First, there is divergent thinking, the wild, open exploration where we generate countless ideas. It's about letting your mind wander and seeing possibilities everywhere. Second, there is convergent thinking, the focused, analytical process where we take all those ideas and choose the ones that make the most sense or have the greatest potential. We saw this in the story of the Post-it note. A simple invention sat for years, waiting for the perfect problem to appear. Creativity is often like that. Sometimes a solution comes before the problem, and sometimes it comes after. We also discovered the power of changing perspective. Looking at a problem through different eyes can create entirely new ideas. Reed Hastings did this when he transformed a $40 late fee into the idea for Netflix. We learned about the quiet magic of incubation, stepping away from a problem and letting your subconscious mind work on it. Just like Archimedes in his bathtub, sometimes the best ideas come when you are relaxed and not forcing it. And finally, we understood that our environment matters. Creativity grows stronger when we create spaces that encourage new thoughts and when we feed our minds a diverse diet of experiences. Visiting a new place, trying a new activity, meeting new people, or learning something unusual, these are all ways to feed your creativity. The simple habit of carrying a notebook and capturing every small idea ensures that no spark of inspiration is ever lost. Ideas can come at any time on a walk, in the shower, or while waiting in line. By writing them down, you make your mind more creative and ready for the next connection. Your creative journey starts now. It doesn't need to begin with a giant project or an ambitious goal. It can start with asking one more question today, taking a walk with new eyes, noticing things you've never seen before, giving yourself permission to have one bad idea without judgment. Creativity is a practice. It is a daily habit. It is a way of looking at the world with an open heart and an open mind. When you practice creativity, it leads to more interesting solutions, more fulfilling work, and a more vibrant, colorful life. Every small step you take strengthens your creative mind. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope this journey into creative thinking has been both useful and inspiring. It is a topic I am deeply passionate about, and I truly believe it holds the key to unlocking your potential. If you found this episode helpful, and if you know someone who might enjoy it too, share it with them. And to make sure you never miss a new adventure in learning and growth, subscribe to our channel, Super English Talks, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you are the first to know when a new episode is ready. My name is Jara, and it has been a real pleasure to guide you today. I look forward to exploring more fascinating topics with you very soon. Until then, stay curious, keep observing, keep asking questions, and remember that your creative journey is always just beginning.